Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Sunday. Hey everyone, happy Sunday. I have no agenda with you all today. I'm just hopping on, checking in, see how y'all are doing this Sunday. I'm working on my knits today. I'm making a t-shirt. Look, I've got the pattern right next to me. I can show you what I'm making right now. I am making this maritime tee. But I'm making it in NYX colors for the season coming up. So I'm making myself a NYX shirt. But checking in to say hi and to take some of your questions, chat a little bit, check in, see how you're feeling. Someone says scared. Just here to chat about any of the questions you might have. And someone said it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Jaslyn. Someone said, I wish I knew how to, someone said Mets mittens. See, the good thing is this does work as a Knicks shirt or a Mets shirt. So I was born in the Bronx, so I'm more of a Yankee fan myself, but I will cheer for the Mets. You know, last year they had a great run. I'm not an anti-Mets Yankees fan. I am a Yankees fan, and I like the Knicks. I'm saying Knicks. I'm mixing up all my teams. I like the Mets, but this is being knit as a Knicks shirt, but it can... I now have something to wear to Mets games, too. Someone said, quick question, when's the next vote on the budget? What needs to happen to move the budget forward? So as we know, the government is shut down. And the next move, basically, the ball is in the Senate's court procedurally. So basically, the House Republican majority voted on a budget that... the House Republican majority voted on a budget that's going to allow a bunch of healthcare cuts to happen, which is, you know, some people are already starting to get their healthcare premium notices out that these healthcare premiums that they're used to are going to double or go up by other huge amounts. So the Republican budget is allowing that to continue. That was passed by the House. So now the ball's in the Senate's court. Senate Democrats are saying we need to fix healthcare if you want our votes on this. And so that's where kind of all of this negotiation with the White House is happening. So once Schumer, Jeffries, Trump, all these folks, Thune, Johnson, once they kind of agree on something, they're going to need votes. And so that's the next step. The next step is like, we are basically waiting on basically the White House to negotiate with the House and the Senate. And then procedurally, whatever is the outcome of that negotiation has to pass through the Senate. And then it'll bounce back to the House with any changes they may make. Now, if the Senate caves entirely with no changes, which I actually don't think that's going to happen, but, you know, wouldn't be... It has happened in the past. Now, if that happens, then we'll see. But I don't think that's going to happen. But if that did happen, it would just go straight to the president's desk because that's what the House voted on straight. So we'll see. Taking a look at some of your other questions here. Let's see. Should we be trying to immigrate to somewhere else? So listen, I personally would not because, or, you know, I think like people kind of talk about this a lot, and there's kind of been this chatter of people moving to different countries. Obviously, like people have whatever rights and choices that they want to make. And the irony of this is like plenty of people leave their countries to come to the United States. And I mean, it was like this too, even like when Biden won, there were a lot of people that were like, we can't stay in America anymore. And it speaks to how polarized the country is. But I really personally, and everyone has like different assessments, but I think that it's important to not allow authoritarianism to win and to stand up to these bullies. And of course, there are different levels of vulnerability here in this country. So I don't think this is like a answer yes or no, but like there, even just from states to states, there's a lot of parents of LGBT kids that are moving to other states because the states that they're in don't support them feeling safe. And so, you know, I do think that even places within our country, there are ways that we can use our presence to make a difference. Let me see what other questions you guys have. Let's see. How can we help the situation in Chicago and Portland? Now, you know, I think that it is very important. So a huge part of what the administration is doing in Chicago and Portland is based on propaganda and also based on creating propaganda. Like Trump himself, allegedly, there were these stories that he saw these like old videos of some of the protests in Portland from like, I think like either George Floyd or around like 5 years old. And he was making decisions around that. And I think there was allegedly some of this reporting that the governor had called him and saying, these videos that you're talking about aren't even contemporary. They're making decisions on aren't even contemporary, which, you know, I wouldn't doubt that something like that happened. But the reason that things like this are successful is because there's so much propaganda. It's not uncommon for very old videos to circulate and for people to claim that they are from the present day. Some of it is just misinformation, is like people just not knowing that that's not true and amplifying it. We see this happen all the time, especially in the fog of war, but now here with the National Guard or with some of these claims around protests, this is happening and being used more as a technique. And so what I would say is that especially in times like these, it's very important to document these sites and show that they are not these like crazy scenes that are trying to be passed off by the administration. People are trying to kind of circulate this image and these areas. It happened with Los Angeles earlier this year, where Fox News and all these places were trying to circulate these huge these like big scenes as though Los Angeles was on fire and that there were all of these clashes and things like that, when really there were some protests, but it was the equivalent of a few blocks. I think it was like 4 blocks where these protests were happening, but they were trying to make it seem across the country that it was like the entire city of Los Angeles was in flames in order to justify and try to win over public opinion on sending in the National Guard into cities. And so the more that, if you live in these areas, the more that you can document outside of these facilities, the more that you can document, even if some of the scenes are almost boring looking, it's important to show that and to air that and to repeat it. Because I do believe that our media landscape has changed dramatically, and the social media landscape has changed dramatically even since 2020, even in just the last couple of years, in ways that are very hard for people to understand. We have become algorithmically, we were already politically polarized, but our country has become algorithmically polarized. And so it is hard, I think, for folks to understand the broader landscape of public opinion, because there are people that are living in a MAGA universe online, that their algorithms feed that to them, and people in that mindset think that no one else really has differing opinions. And that happens as well in progressive content and algorithms, right? Like, you are being fed and being surrounded by what the opinions that you agree with. And everybody thinks they're right? And this is not to diminish your point of view, my point of view, but it's for us to be aware of the fact that very often people find it hard to even conceive of the fact that other people, no less, maybe even half the country, believes differently than you do. And that is why I say that that when the country is split so evenly, it is such, as we see in our elections, but this isn't just about elections, this is about public opinion in a lot of different issues. The margin for persuasion is very slim. And that is why the White House is always pushing out this propaganda. And so when you are able to counter that with real life evidence, videos, etc., then we all kind of chip in to pointing out when a lie is being told. And oftentimes in environments like these, lies are told in order to consolidate power, so that the president and the federal government can consolidate power and abuse individual rights. And so in terms of helping, there is bearing witness and sharing what is the truth is very important to debunking these things that they're constantly circulating. And then, of course, there's the real tangible things that you can do in terms of ensuring that the people around you know that they are safe with you, in building community, in looking out for each other. People think this stuff is corny or insignificant, but when you start to do this in mass, it starts to build up the conditions for larger forms of resistance, and it also makes larger forms of resistance more likely because people feel less alone. And so, yes, organizing digitally and just speaking your mind digitally is important, because I'm sure some of you have had moments lately where you saw someone post something online, even if it was an influencer or something like that you follow, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know they were like that. And that it's not about arguing with people, but making and asserting your values in a time like this and in an environment like this is absolutely an act of courage. And I would encourage, it doesn't have to be preachy, it doesn't have to be obnoxious, but letting your values be known is very powerful, because people are persuaded. Oftentimes the things that persuade people is not just about facts or policy, as much as some people would love that to be, but it's also about psychology and community. And it is hard sometimes for people to speak up if they feel like they will be alone, if they feel like they will be endangered, if they feel like they will be vulnerable. And so every time a person kind of makes themselves known, it makes it easier for other people to be known. And again, it doesn't have to be this preachy negative thing. In fact, it should be the opposite. I think people should find positivity and safety in accepting worldview. But it is a brave thing to do nonetheless, because as much as we've seen with Jimmy Kimmel and CBS, with Stephen Colbert, and all of these media companies that are getting taken over, the fact of the matter is, what gets you canceled is not like being racist, and what gets you canceled is not being intolerant or being inflammatory. What gets you canceled nowadays is challenging power. And the people who are in power is this administration. I mean, just like, we live in a time that is so absurd that taking Tylenol is like seen as some political act. Like, give me a break. But this is the time that we're living in nonetheless. And so making your values known where you have them, when you have them, is a very big and courageous thing to do. And don't underestimate the value or importance of that. It is the seed of everything, and it's the start of everything. Let me see. Someone said, can you turn on captions? I would love to. Am I allowed to? I didn't know that I could turn on captions on live. So I'm sorry. I'm not sure how to do that, but if someone has instructions on how to turn on captions on live, if you put it down there, I'll try to do that. Someone said, please speak on the flotilla. Yes, there's a large flotilla of humanitarian aid that is attempting to enter Gaza and deliver much needed food supplies. I believe Greta Thunberg has been detained, and there were people I don't want to speak out of turn because I have to see the latest reporting, but I believe she had been detained. But these were deliveries of humanitarian aid. And for those of you who don't know, if you are on my email list, we have been fundraising all year. I mean, much longer than that, for 2 years now, I think, with World Central Kitchen, who have been one of the sadly few organizations that have been able to successfully operate and feed people in Gaza. And we have been fundraising hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of food aid for them. At different times, there's different levels of success. As we know, there is a mass famine that is happening in Gaza due to a large blockade. And it's a forced famine, a large blockade by the Israeli government of humanitarian supplies. And this is a war crime. It's a crime against humanity because it is indiscriminate. And indiscriminate blockades of food, water, etc. That, it's just simply put a war crime, a forced famine. Children are dying, innocent people are dying. The vast majority of people who have been killed in this conflict are innocents, and they are women and children. But sometimes even just saying women and children is difficult, because men are innocent too in this, and the idea that there's some inherent guilt to being a grown man, I think, is wrong as well. But it does go without saying that the vast majority of people that have been killed. And so this flotilla is a group of humanitarians. They're from many different countries and nationalities, and there are many, there are Americans on board as well. And I signed a letter with about 20 other members of Congress to Secretary of State Marco Rubio about ensuring the protection of all Americans on board. So if you can Google that letter if you're interested in it, and the other signatories. There were also some senators that have also taken similar action as well, but But that letter that I signed was House members. So but I believe there were also a separate letter that was signed by senators that you can look up if you are interested. Let's see. Let's see. Taking a look at some of your other questions here. How do I intern for your office? So I have 2 newsletters. I have 2 email lists. We have our organizing email list, which is at ocasio-cortez.com. And that has all of our volunteer opportunities that are there, local and national. It's when we're doing local food drives and local community events, but also when we're doing national phone banks and other kind of volunteer activities. That newsletter is at ocasio-cortez.com. But for internships, ocasio-cortez.gov is my official side account. And we send out emails whenever our internship cycle opens up. I have interns. We recruit and hire new interns multiple times a year. We do it for the January semester, the summer semester, and the fall semester. So definitely sign up for that email list. You will get an email whenever our intern cycle opens up. And if you don't get it one season, I highly encourage you to reapply. My office, I pay all of my interns. I do not do free internships. I do not believe in free internships. And so I pay all of my interns, but that also means that sometimes I will have a smaller amount of interns than some other offices will. And so as much as we would like to hire tons and tons of people, we can't, but we do hire seasonally. So keep trying if you haven't yet, and good luck. Let me see what else. Taking a look at some of your other questions. How would you balance personal stuff with activism? As a university student, I struggle to balance academics with volunteering and being civically engaged. Thank you. I think, well, when they talk about work and your personal life, I do think that, to me, people often talk about balance, and maybe it's just because I'm knitting, but balance implies that this thing is on this side and the rest of your life is on this side, and one takes away from the other. And I say maybe I'm knitting, maybe it's because I'm knitting that I say this, but I tend to think of it less as balance and more as how do we weave these things together? How can you find opportunities to integrate all of these things together so that you aren't choosing between one or another? So for example, when I actually first started college, I started off as a pre-medical student. I actually was a science major. I had done a lot of science work when I was in high school. I was doing science research competitions and stuff like that. But I was also very interested in public issues. And I was not always studying economics. So I started off as a pre-medical student. And I was also very interested in global health and public health. I mean, really just health disparities in general, both in the US and outside of the US. I was just curious as to why some communities get sicker than others and how we can solve this issue instead of just treating one person with diabetes, trying to understand why a population gets diabetes or asthma, for example. And so I started to do more healthcare related work and studying it at the intersection of those things. And I spent some time in West Africa. I spent 4 months in Niger learning from a lot of midwives there and people there. And it was a really beautiful experience. And as I started studying and thinking about things more at a population level, I got more drawn to public health. And as I got more drawn to public health, I started seeing more that a lot of our health outcomes and differences in health outcomes really had to do with differences in economics and differences in income and differences in like wealth gaps map very neatly over health gaps in a lot of different circumstances and areas. And I took my first economics course and I really enjoyed it. And I kind of went full bore into the economics route. Anyways, I say all of this because when you lean into your interests with what you have and the skills you have or where you are in life, that will simply lead you to where you need to be in your little pocket of the world. And you don't have to have the whole end answer just to start. I think if you just start, it's less about balancing, and to me it's more about how do I integrate these things. And instead of having them be separate, you can find ways, even if they are very small, to nudge in your part of the world, and that kind of opens one door, which opens another door, which opens another door. And that integration, as long as you're trying and you're trying to be creative with it, will help you find your path. Let's see. Taking a look at some of your other questions here. Sorry, just pulling up some of your other questions. You've said that this administration is not strong as they try to look. They have weak spots. Can you speak on it? What have you observed? I do think that this administration is a lot weaker than they like to portray. It's hard because even the news doesn't report on this. And as we've seen, you know, CBS just got taken over by some right-wing person that has like a very thin resume. And like all these news organizations are getting like sued, or we saw what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. And so we saw ABC News with this, or I believe it was also CBS, I believe, with the settlement that with the administration that was like pretty, you know, let's just say didn't really have grounding. And so increasingly this administration's losses are not being as reported on. But very often they do have to reverse course. They will make this big announcement that they're going to do something, for example, such as with the National Guard in Los Angeles or California earlier this year. Like they what they do, they have this pattern of coming out very aggressively, and then people react to that aggressive announcement. But when it's time for them to actually follow up, they are not able to follow up, or they have to reverse course. But what people remember is the aggressive announcement instead of the reverse in course. And so like I would say the National Guard is an example of that in California, where they are trying to do this big thing for reaction, but they often have to retreat afterwards. And even now, they passed in May $1 trillion in healthcare cuts. And this is going to be devastating for us. I want to be very clear about that. I think that they passed this really thinking that Medicaid, like I pulled a Republican aside on the floor and I said, hey man, there's no cameras around here. Like, I just want to understand. Like, I'm not here to put you on blast in front of a camera, just person to person. I genuinely want to understand, because I do. Like, people think that trying to understand another person means that you agree with them or that you're being soft on them. And it's a huge problem in this day and age, because that mentality really prevents people from being able to connect and persuade. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But I pulled this guy aside and I said, hey man, like, I know that you represent a couple of rural hospitals, and this bill is going to devastate rural hospitals. Like, I just want to know from your perspective. I'm not trying to win you over. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I just want to know from your perspective, are you worried about that? Or like, what are you thinking about with your hospitals and your people? Because a lot of people don't know, like a ton of ACA recipients are in red states. A lot of Medicaid recipients are in red states. These are like Trump voters that are almost disproportionately, in many circumstances, being negatively affected. And so I said, like, walk me through how you see this. And he was like, yeah, I just don't believe it. He's like, I know that you guys need to, like, you know, make a big deal out of this to like score political points, but I just don't believe it. And I'm kind of sitting here like, like, okay, like, this data shows that this bill is going to devastate a lot of people. But a lot of these folks just like don't believe that data. Good to know. Like, good. That is an important thing to know, right? What a person responds to. And so, anyways, they didn't believe a lot of these warnings about Medicaid and the effects on hospitals when they passed this bill. So they passed the bill thinking that it's all political chit chat. And then after they passed this bill, a lot of their hospitals were like, you know, there was one hospital in one of these districts that was like, yeah, we might have to close. And they are now on their back foot. Like, they thought this was just a Democratic talking point. And now that their own people are being affected and their own hospitals are warning them, they are now kind of low-key panicking. Because Donald Trump himself posted on Truth Social months ago being like, Medicaid's not going to be touched. Medicaid's not going to be touched. Well, promises made, promises broken. And I'm sure that many of you may be hearing from people that maybe voted for Donald Trump in November and are like, I didn't think it was going to be like this. And as much as one can feel however one feels about this, the fact of the matter is these people are sensitive to political reality. They are sensitive to polls. They are sensitive to these things. And I think they are very frightened. That's why they don't want us talking about healthcare. They don't want us talking about Medicaid. They don't want us. I mean, if you just post, you want to talk about something that you can do. Here's a great thing that you can do. These healthcare notices are going out. They started getting finalized October 1st. I believe in California, They will be hitting your inboxes on October 15th. Across the country, every state in the country has a different day. Like the premium changes kind of got decided on October 1st, and they're getting mailed out throughout the month in the country. When you receive your premium change, post it. Post it online. I'm so serious about this right now. Post your premium change online. Say, I just got notification, or there were some people that were DMing me. I work at an insurance company and this is the change that we're seeing for people. Or like, I just got my notice in the mail of my premium. This is what it was, and this is what they're telling me it is later. And it is very important for you to share that, because we live in such a polarized political environment and in such a polarized information environment that if someone says something, even if they cite studies, someone else will just automatically not believe them because they have a D or an R next to their name, right? And so this isn't just about citing studies. Citing studies, I think, is important when you are talking to people that are listening, right? When we are talking to one another, when I'm telling you about the fact that some of the Yale studies that Bernie and I mentioned in our video indicate that 50,000 Americans are going to die from being uninsured if all of these cuts pass as is per year, like that is something that you may, if you are already listening to me, you will hear me say that. But you as individual people have a tremendous amount of power when you post your life. And so when you get that notice in the mail, post it. Post it, because your premiums skyrocketing and the cost of your healthcare skyrocketing, and this is going to affect everybody. It doesn't matter if you have Medicaid, ACA, standard insurance, it's all getting so much more expensive because they backed up $1 trillion of healthcare funding out of the system. And when you cut $1 trillion out of our healthcare system, then that gets made up by jacking up prices on middle class people, on upper middle class people, on lower class people. Everybody's getting hit by this. Whether you have Medicaid, you're paying more. If you have standard private insurance, you're paying more. If you have ACA, you're paying more, because we just vacuumed out $1 trillion of infrastructure from our healthcare system. And so there's no escaping that reality. And so when you see your premium go up, post it and say, like, thank you, like this Republican House, Senate, whatever, for these cuts. Or you just point to the healthcare cuts, because someone out there may not believe me when I say something simply because they have certain thoughts about me, or they don't like the political party that I'm a part of, or whatever it is. But they will listen to you. They will believe you. When you post that screenshot, it is far more compelling than talking about some damn Yale study. And I love the public health students at Yale, but we know certain things, and that information is important. It is critical. It informs policy and lawmaking, but political persuasion is also a different category. And so we need to rely on science and the scientists and everything to inform many of our decisions. But in terms of who the people that are open to being persuaded need, they need to hear it from you. They need to hear it from people out and around them, because community and that echo sound is incredibly important. So doing that, let me see what else we've got here. Let's see. I'm taking a peek at some of the questions here. How much power are the Republicans going to give to Trump? The Republican Party has ceded all power to Trump. There's like not a single Republican left that stands up to Donald Trump. And that wasn't always the case, by the way. There were some Republicans that did stand up to Trump, and the party purged them. You know, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney. I mean, listen, not that I was a particular fan, but they were some of the only people that were registered Republicans that indicated their difference of opinions with Trump. And you see what happens with the party. The Republican Party just purges anyone who thinks differently. Let's see. Taking a look. Why aren't you going to Fox News and having town halls? I do have town halls in general. And in fact, Fox News did take one of our recent town halls and put it on their Facebook page, which I was kind of impressed by. I don't know if I would ever get a fair shot on Fox. They are a Murdoch-owned corporation, and I just don't know if I could do a town hall that wouldn't get like edited and chopped up in a way that was totally dishonest. So, you know, I hadn't gone on to Fox very often. I went on once at the beginning of COVID. At the very beginning of COVID, like I'm talking about like one of the earliest days, trying to warn people, like, please take care of yourself. Like, I think this was, I mean, it was so early. It was before there were any, it was way before there were any shots available. I think it was before even tests, like the ability to test for COVID was on the market. But like trying to tell people like, hey, like, take care of yourself, because something big is about to happen, and like this thing is coming and people are going to get sick, and like, please, like, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, but like a lot of people could get hurt by this. And I think even then there was like drama with it, and it was like the most benign thing. But let's see. So many people I know are scared, but they are hiding and not speaking up. How can we dissent and challenge without endangering ourselves? Well, I think that every person right now needs to make their own assessments, right? If you are an immigrant in this country and you are on a visa and your visa is very precarious, like, I understand, and Marco Rubio and the administration has been like, don't do this, don't do that. You are far more vulnerable than a U.S. citizen. And so, you know, I think we can look around and look at the power that we have in a given moment. So much of our power right now is in witnessing, like genuinely taking out your camera and filming interactions is very important when you see, like, especially if ICE later on tries to claim that there was some huge riot and there was nothing at all in particular going on. It's important to have evidence of that. But also, I know this may sound a little silly, but it is important. Like, humor is genuinely very important. These people want to seem all powerful. They want you afraid of them. They want you scared. And there is a lot to be afraid of. There is a lot at stake. And there is a lot of risk in this moment. But the last thing they want you to do is laugh at them. The last thing they want you to do is make fun of them, because that diminishes them far more than them trying to stick a boot in your face. The fact of the matter is like, these people are, yes, tremendously dangerous, but a lot of them are tremendously dull. And I remember this moment earlier this year. I was hosting Know Your Rights seminars with our immigrant community and with our U.S. citizen community as well. Because as we've seen, ICE is taking up U.S. citizens as well and abusing the rights of U.S. citizens. So I started hosting Know Your Rights seminars for the community, because following the law is not just for U.S. citizens, it's for ICE too. And they need to follow the law as well. And so when you know what the law is and what your rights are, you can enforce those rights. So I was hosting a lot of these Know Your Rights seminars throughout the district. And Tom Homan, who was the acting director of ICE, who was later allegedly reported to be taking $50,000 in cash in kava bags, whatever, allegedly, according to some of this reporting. But back then, Tom Homan decides that he's going to try to threaten me. And he's going to say, I'm going to request that the Department of Justice open an investigation onto you, a legal investigation onto you into aiding and abetting crime. Excuse me? Aiding and abetting crime. We are aiding and abetting the prevention of crime, because people need to know their rights so that their rights aren't violated. So anyways, he goes on and makes this huge public announcement about how he wants to target me for a federal investigation. That's a very serious thing, right? This guy has a lot of power, right? He was the acting director of ICE. He has a direct line to Pam Bondi at the Department of Justice, a department of whose actual respect for the law is eroding by the day. And it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. It doesn't matter if it's right or not. They have the power, and they are positioned to abuse their power and to open such a thing on totally baseless grounds that even if it's false, they can try to do that, right? And so that's a scary thing. So I can respond to that by being scared and stopping my Know Your Rights seminars, right? Pulling back. But I didn't, because this guy is a joke. I am using clean language on this live, but this guy is a joke. Kristi Noem is a joke. J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, went behind a podium and went, boo-hoo-hoo, the shutdown is AOC's fault, as though this man isn't vice president of the United States of America. You know what I have to say to that? You look like a clown back there. You're the second most powerful person in this country, and you're crying about me? And you're blaming the whole government shutdown on me? LOL, my guy. Like, laugh at them. Make them small. These people seek out and abuse all of this power because they want to feel big. They want to feel bigger than you. They crush immigrant communities, not because these people are criminals. Mind you, look at ICE activity. They are not going after criminals. They are going after kids. There was a 7-year-old in my district that got taken by ICE. A 7-year-old. A 7-year-old. And I've been doing what I can to try to intervene in that case. I can't speak to it, but like a 7-year-old. These people do this in order to make themselves feel powerful, because deep, deep, deep down inside, they feel and know how small they are. And in order for a small person to feel big, they have to crush someone else. And like that is what their whole political identity is all about. It is about this forced supremacy that is based on nothing because they feel and know how small they actually are. And instead of actually fixing the things that are making them so small and insufficient, they have to pick on someone, or they have to pick on communities that have no one defending them. That's what this is all about. This whole thing, this whole fight about, Democrats are shutting down the government because they want healthcare for illegal immigrants. First of all, totally false. Second of all, when they, as I've said before, federal law prevents undocumented people from getting covered by ACA insurance, Medicaid, etc., right? They are trying to come back with this tiny loophole, being like, oh, but there are some federal funds that could possibly on the state level, You know what they're actually pointing to is that Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, the United States passed a law that said if you walk into an ER, a hospital cannot refuse you care if you can't afford it, if you're not covered. Because we decided that we wanted to be a civilized country, that if someone gets hit by a car and they're bleeding out, that a doctor isn't checking for their insurance coverage before they go rush into an emergency room. Like that you are treating the human being first, because we don't want to live in, trust me, regardless of your stances on immigration, you do not want to live in a country where that law is reversed. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. And so they're trying to whatever, the point is that they are scrapping and grasping at straws because they have nothing else. Laugh at them. Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10", and he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible. Laugh at them. Laugh at them. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, we're here to be strong for one another. We need to expose the lies. We need to never let off the gas when it comes to protecting one another, exposing the lies, documenting things. We're seeing this too, right? And so I think it's very important to be able to hold multiple things at once. And we've seen this work in other cultures. We've seen this work in other countries. Yes, the resistance to authoritarianism is very real. The risks of abuse of power are very real. But one of the most powerful cultural things that you can do to a political movement that is predicated on the puffery of insecure masculinity. That's what this is about. This isn't, people talk about toxic masculinity. More than it, let's put that to the side for just 1 second. This is about insecure masculinity. And one of the best ways that you can dismantle a movement of insecure men is by making fun of them. By having secure men who aren't afraid of successful people around them, who are good dads, who have strong values, also participating in that as well. So that's what I have for that. And also someone said, short kings are great. Absolutely. I'm not here. I want to absolutely make sure that I talk about that. I'm not here to make fun of anyone's anything, but the way people overcompensate over their own stories is what I'm talking about there. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Shout out to our short kings. Someone said not short king, short troll. That's correct. There's a difference. Let's see. Um, can't we back down the age limit for Medicare? I'm a big proponent of that. I think I have lots of ideas around expanding Medicare, whether it's on age or other, or also including dental and vision. But I'm a big proponent of that. And someone said, what are you stitching? I said this at the beginning of the live. Sorry, I put down my thing, but I said this at the beginning of the live, but I am making this maritime tee, but I'm doing it with NYX colors because the season is starting up. But as other people mentioned, it can also be worn to a Mets game. So that's a 2-in-1, I suppose. Let's see. I think that's all I've got for now. And hopefully, because, oh wait, there's one more thing that I saw a question about earlier on Epstein. The House of Representatives, the entire federal government is shut down, right? We should be at work. The House of Representatives and the Republican House is not reconvening us because they have refused to swear in the 218th member who would be signing onto the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. And so you need 218 people to release that, to call on the release of the Epstein files for us to get to that majority. Every Democrat is on it, and I think we have a handful of Republicans. And I think some of the I think Thomas Massey's on it. I think maybe even Lauren Boebert signed on to it. And I think Mike Johnson is trying to get either Lauren Boebert or some of these other Republicans to get their name off of the discharge petition before Adelita Grijalva, who is that 218th member, comes to Congress, because she was supposed to be sworn in. It is actually insane. She won her special election. Once you win your election, you're supposed to get sworn in. He is refusing to swear her in. And they're using the excuse of the fact that the House isn't in session to not swear her in. However, Mike Johnson swore in Republicans when the House wasn't in session multiple times, who won in special elections, who were in the same exact scenario. And the reason he's not doing that is because she would be the last signature that would trigger release a vote and release on some of these files. And he doesn't want to trigger that vote, so he's refusing to sign her in, to swear her in. And I believe that he's keeping the House out of session in order to further delay swearing her in. Y'all, I said this a bunch of times. Listen, I don't take corporate money. I don't take special interest money. I don't take it at all, period. And I don't care about who's caught up in the Epstein stuff. I could not care less. If you are implicated in it, if you are caught up in it, there are a lot of people who are victims, and there needs to be justice in these situations. And the idea that, listen, release it all. Release it all. But it's these people are doing a lot of cover for Epstein. And I think it's actually getting kind of crazy at this point. It's actually getting crazy. And I think we all deserve, I mean, I think a lot of people, even at the beginning of this, were like, okay, kind of, it almost started with a lot of people kind of just discussing these things online. But I think even people who aren't online or aren't tracking these discussions are finding all of these votes now to be quite strange. Like the effort, the level of effort to just kind of like not confront this it's like, I think it's breaking through to a lot of people that this is like weird in a way that is nonpartisan, and that's a rarer and rarer thing nowadays. All right, I'll see y'all again, since Mike Johnson isn't calling the House back next week. We are on 48-hour notice, but so far it looks like we will not be called back. And so until we are called back, I will be in the district, in the community around. I helped open one of the first Albanian dual language school in the world in our district, that's serving our community. So shout out to our Albanian community, especially in Throgs Neck in the Bronx. But I'm out and about. I've been doing things. I've been touring facilities and such. So I'll be here. So maybe that means we'll have some more lives. But it was nice doing this little Sunday yap with you. And we'll see y'all. Bye-bye.